Anybody else like to add anything before I start second part to the show today, which I haven't even mentioned before? Anybody else want to add anything?
Yeah, this is Tim in Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something I've been wondering about that you mentioned Enki creating the human body from the monkeys, and then we are aware of the 5 different bodies that we have, like the emotional body, the astral body. And if these reptilians don't have emotions, where do these other bodies come from?
That might be a Claudia question.
I was thinking that at that moment. What happens is we collect these quote-unquote other vehicles, which are called bodies, that are attached to us so that we can function on more than one level or one frequency. Just like in electronics, look at your eye. You can only see a certain range of light. Cats, dogs, animals can see beyond what we can see. It's simple like that. Same as a dog who can hear a dog whistle, but we can't hear it. We have bodies that allow us to function. Like the brain has a mind that collects facts, and we help us make a decision to do something. Our emotions come from what we feel, how we react in a certain situation. And you have fear, love, hate, anger, all of the different situations that we, face every day in real life. The causal body is simply our memory storage unit. Computers have, so much memory storage. Well, so do the human body. So the bodies were constructed to give us access to information, not just in one area. Our DNA is also part of the whole scenario in that it carries information, just like a carrier wave. You turn on your TV and here you can watch Channel 2 or Channel 10 or whatever. Each one is different, but it's all present at the same instant in time. And we select what we want to explore or examine. So bodies were constructed to give us further stuff like storage of memories. We also have had past lives because we've been born before, lived on the planet, died, came back again to learn the lesson. It is an opportunity each lifetime to gather more information and to become more aware of what the all is. And by that, it's simply to say that there is more than what's in front of you. Explore, take a chance, look at something, find out what's going on in your universe. And yes, we do like to sit down on Sunday afternoon and watch the football game and have a pizza and some beer. That's the human condition of being out of it, so to speak. We're not going to care about anything. And we are just encouraged to do nothing but find more physical products to have in our home to make our life easier. But there's more to life than that. I mean, just simply go outside and enjoy the sunshine. Look at a blade of grass. Heavens, just look at your thumb, and you can see there's a lot to know. And now our scientists are finding out about new science, new frequencies, and exploring worlds beyond our physical awareness. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Claudia. That was excellent. Anybody else like to add anything else before I start on my next topic?
I'd just like to mention that you mentioned that the guy, I guess David Icke, says that the reptilians have an IQ of 10,000. And it's interesting that with such a high IQ, it still they're not aware of what life seems to be all about.
Well, awareness isn't about intelligence. And that the IQ of 10,000, I'm the one that dreamed that one up. It wasn't David Icke. But I just wanted to show how powerful and why the Anunnaki have such a great advantage over us as far as the physical and mental capabilities, and why they're so awesome, and that's why so many people worship them. By the way, just to give you an idea how powerful the influence is, I'll share this real quickly. About 2 or 3 nights ago, I woke up from a dream, and as I was coming out of my dream, the only thing I could remember in my dream was that I did something that the reptilians really, really, really did not like. And in about the 2 seconds that it took me 2 or 3 seconds it took me to wake up, as I was waking up, there was a brilliant flash that flashed across my eyes that lit up the entire room and almost blinded me with my eyes closed in my sleep, followed by a lightning bolt and thunder that hit the house I was in. And the thunder was so loud it just shook the rafters and the ceilings and the walls. And that was the influence's response to whatever I did in the dream state. I don't know what it was I did, but they were letting me know that, hey, we're pretty powerful here. Better toe the line and watch what you're doing. So I just thought I wanted to share that with you guys. Okay, well, let me, if I have time, I want to share something I found very interesting, and it answers a lot of questions that we've had. Just in the last day or so, I first heard about this about a week ago, but I didn't have a chance to look into it until yesterday. And there's a gentleman by the name of Douglas Vogt, V-O-G-T, who has started what he calls the Die-Hold Foundation. And he has a series of YouTube videos that you can go look at. But he was relating a very interesting history of the United States. And what he was relating went something like this. As everyone knows, in World War II, during the early 40s, we had a fleet of submarines that was out there fighting the German U-boats and the Japanese and all that kind of stuff. And one of the interesting things that the U.S. Navy had to do was, in order to operate these submarines safely underwater, they decided that they wanted to map the ocean floor. And so they have, in the early 40s, mid 40s, they pull out their state-of-the-art sonars and radars and everything they can, and they rig up all these devices on special submarines, and they start mapping the seafloor, and they started mapping the east coast of the United States. And this up in Connecticut or whatever it is where they make the submarines, and so they were doing the mapping of the ocean floor along the East Coast, and they came across this trench, like off the coast of Norfolk, Virginia, or someplace. I don't have the exact details of the river, but what they found was this deep trench, and it was coming off the mouth, the delta of one of the rivers on the East Coast, and this this trench went from the coastline all the way down to the bottom of the ocean floor of the Pacific, the Atlantic. And they were wondering, well, this is really kind of odd. And then they investigated more, and they found out that the bottom of this trench contained a whole bunch of huge boulders, and it contained a whole bunch of trees. But there was no current. It was just sitting there like somebody just dumped them all in there, and they couldn't figure out, well, how can this be? Where did all these trees and rocks and everything come from? So then they decided to inspect the shorelines a lot closer on the East Coast and West Coast, and they found a few more trenches like that. But they also found that there was water erosion down to 400 feet below the surface of the ocean. It would be like if you had a freshwater lake and the water level in the lake dropped down maybe 20 or 30 feet. You know how the shoreline would look ragged, and like when it rained, it would have grooves in the shoreline where the water ran out into the lake where the lake level was real low. Well, they found that all the way around the United States. And then they decided, well, gee, this is how can this happen? Because how can you have flowing water creating all these ridges when the ocean levels are covering it up to 400 feet above it? So then they took their submarines over and they started exploring the major rivers like the Ganges River over in China and the Amazon River and the Mississippi Delta, or the Mississippi River, the Nile Delta over in Egypt. And they found that in some of these rivers, the trenches off the delta were as deep as the Grand Canyon. They looked just like the Grand Canyon. And they were having, well, gee, how can this possibly be? And they figured, well, something must have caused the ocean levels to drop at some point in time. There's something going on here that we don't know about. So then they decided to bring in a team of scientists, and they started studying this more closely, and they found a pattern, and they found an interesting pattern that approximately every 12,000 years, the ocean levels dropped by somewhere 400 to 600 feet. Every 12,000 years, going back millions of years. And then they thought, well, what in the world would be causing the ocean levels to drop by 400 feet and then come back up again? Well, anyway, so they were thinking, well, the only thing that could cause that to happen would be as if the Earth suddenly stopped rotating and the ocean swelled over the land and went back again, causing that, where you had a swell. But their research showed that the ocean level stayed 400 feet low for a period of time. And so further research, they started thinking, well, maybe the sun has something to do with this. Well, since I don't have a lot of time left, they started studying the sun, and they found out that a solar cycle lasts 11.09 years, and every 8 years, or 8 solar cycles, a guy by the name of Gleisberg discovered the cycle that every 88.73 years, the sun goes crazy. It goes nuts. And in 1957 to 1958 was the last Gleisberg cycle. The sun had something on the order of I got it written down here, had 420 sunspots in one day. It's the last Gleisberg cycle that was the end of 57 and the beginning of 1958. And so they thought, well, gee, the aurora borealis and everything was so brilliant that it scared the pants off the scientific community. Well, it scared the scientific community so bad that an act of Congress, they decided to create NASA in July 29th of 1958 to explore the sun and go to different planets within our solar system to find out what is going on with the sun. Anyway, they also found, these experts found, that every 136 Liefsberg cycles, each of which is 88.73 years, comes out to be 12,068 years. And they found that if you go back millions of years, you will find out that every 12,068 years, the ocean levels drop by 400 feet for an extended period of time. And they're trying to figure out what in the world is going on here. So upon further research, since I'm running out of time, I'll make a long story short. What they found out was the sun does a nova every 12,068 years and blows off all the dust around the sun out across the solar system and has a solar wind that travels at 1,500 miles per second, 1,500 miles per second, and goes outward from the sun across the solar system. And it is so hot as it goes across that it actually, if there's an ocean facing the sun, that ocean is heated up and boiled off to where the ocean level drops over 1,000 feet from the impact of that solar wind hitting the Earth. And then it takes years for the ocean on the other side to come around and even off, and that's why it averages about 400 to 500 feet deep, because once that 1,000 feet is burned off and sent into space, the other sides fill in the gap, and it takes a while, and then over the 12,000 years, it eventually builds back up to the normal sea levels again. Well, anyway, when they discovered that, they decided, when's this next solar nova going to take place? And they determined that the next solar expansion ring where this takes place is going to happen at the end of the next Liefsberg cycle, which is in the year 2045, I think it was. It's exactly 27 years from now, or 26 or 27 years. And it was right after they made that discovery that the government created the National Science Foundation to dumb everybody down. That was created. Well, that was actually created earlier than all this. But when they found out what was going on, they created the National Science Foundation. And the first thing, when they knew about these nebulas around the sun, our asteroid, or not the asteroid belt, but the Kuiper belt at the edge of our solar system, is the debris from all the novas of our sun going out there. All the water on Mars got burned off by the sun doing this mini supernova. And it's a very, very interesting topic. Right after the National Science Foundation was formed in July 1950, they removed 450 star clusters out of science journals and star journals that showed the rings around stars that were near enough to our Earth where they actually had good pictures of it. They removed them because they did not want anybody getting an understanding that this nova took place on the Earth. So anyway, I'm really running out of time now. I can't really go into a whole lot more detail, but it was like in 1950 or so when all the governments, the education system started dumbing everybody down, And that's when the reptilians really got on the bandwagon to dumb everybody down, and they started lying, and they create all these mind control organizations to dumb us down and put us in prison camps. It all started right after that. And when Ronald Reagan hired Casey to be a CIA head, he asked him, "What's your mission?" And he said, "Our mission is to dumb everybody down so nobody knows the truth about this nova that takes place to the sun." And so that's been their mission. Even Reagan knew about it. Well, anyway, folks, I got about a minute left on the show. I'm running out of time, and I want to thank everybody for joining us. And I'd like to finish the show by everybody singing "New You" all together. There's enough people on where I can't name everybody individually. So I'd like everybody to sing "New You," and on the count of 3, everybody will sing "New You," and I'll end the show. And thank you, everybody, for joining. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, New You. New You. Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for joining the show. You've been wonderful.